We're an hour later than we have been, but we're still here. How we doing?
Doing good. How are you? Excited to talk. We have I guess we were planning on just talking baseball, but I guess the Ravens changed that up a little bit.
Yeah, well, we got to get through the baseball, and then I
Yeah.
don't know what your plans are today, but I have about 35 college basketball games that I want to watch. So
Yeah.
it should be a great day. We are going to do the AL West. We'll get the Angels. We'll see how they look without Ohtani. We'll see if the Astros or the Rangers or the Mariners are your pick to win the division. But look, God, a lot has happened. I feel like if you're listening to us right now, you've already had enough Derrick Henry content. And I really don't like people do that for a living, right? Like you popped on, you guys did live stream to break it down.
Yeah.
So I always like to find a different type topic of conversation. And I
Mhm.
guess it just got under the radar, and I've been wanting to get your thoughts on it. Why exactly did we trade Morgan Moses?
Mhm.
And yeah, why don't you start with that? Why did we trade
Yeah.
Morgan Moses
I
to the
think so. I think the Ravens want to get younger, and I think they were honestly planning on cutting Morgan Moses just to get that cap savings anyway. So it's kind of a blessing that they moved
Okay.
up in the draft when I believe they were going to cut him no matter what. This means two things to me. Either the Ravens, and even Eric DeCosta talked about yesterday at the press conference, he doesn't want to call it generational because that's a lot of pressure. But this tackle class is so top to bottom one of the best we've seen. So I think they're going to target a guy there in the draft, guaranteed. I think they like the development of Daniel Falalele. I mean, it's hard when you look at him not to get excited as 6'8", 350-pound guy. So that obviously helps. But they started towards the end of the year, when me and you, when we would look at snap counts, it started, he would only be playing if someone needed a break. And then they liked him as a sixth lineman. They liked bringing him
Mhm.
in to use when Morgan Moses or Ronnie Stanley wasn't feeling 100%. So he really started to earn the coach's trust. I think that kind of led to them thinking it makes sense to save money with Moses and get younger.
And then what's the read on John Simpson, the starting left guard? He played. Didn't he start every game last year?
Yeah, I think that was just a one $9 million. I don't think the Ravens were going to give that for a guard. I mean, they wouldn't. If they were going to give that money, they would have given it to Kevin Zeitler instead, I believe.
That's what. Wait, let me hit you right
Yeah.
there. Would we have re-signed Zeitler? Because the salary cap, for those of you that aren't quite aware, the salary cap jumped. It always goes up, but it went up way
Yeah.
more than all the teams were expecting. So the
Mhm.
top-heavy teams like the Chiefs, the Niners, and the Ravens are the benefits from it. Because like, oh, we
Yeah.
have extra money. If the Ravens knew that ahead of time, would they have re-signed Zeitler, or what's the
I think
plan
so.
there?
I think they tried. I think they were in talks up until the deadline with Zeitler. I think they both sides wanted it to happen, and I don't think it's completely out of the realm. I think very it's not likely just because we're also eating $4 million of his cap no matter what this year in dead money. So that kind of makes it hard to be like, oh, okay, even though we're paying you $4 million already in dead money, we'll sign you to 6 million anyway. Even though we
Right.
weren't
I
willing to
remember.
do that before.
Right. I remember reading that it's like, hey, if we don't re-sign him, but
Yeah,
now that there's some extra money, he hasn't gotten signed. It always happens where there's a handful of guys after the first day or two
yeah,
where unless you're paying attention and you look at a list, you're like, I guess everybody got signed. Like there's no
right.
free agents. But then there's always a bunch of guys that are kind of lingering. And yeah, he's one of those guys. Will be interesting to see if we try to bring him back. But like you just mentioned, if they were going to, it would have made a hell of a lot more sense a few weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right. Well, my last question for you, as far as the Ravens are concerned, and with the offensive line,
Mhm.
and I know you got really excited. Like Pat Ricard's going to be blocking for Derrick Henry, but I want to get into the weeds of something. The Titans have never had a fullback. Alabama
Yeah.
never really ran with a fullback. I remember reading an article about Derrick Henry several years ago
Mhm.
where he starts so far back compared to most running backs at the line of scrimmage. He likes
Oh, yeah.
having that burst. And he frankly, I forgot exactly what the quote was. I was looking for it today. He doesn't really need he doesn't need the fullback. Are the Ravens going to move off of Ricard? Does he not fit the style that they want?
I
Or are they just going to ask Henry to adjust a little bit?
I think they if they were going to cut Ricard, I think, or work with his cap, I could see a restructure, maybe a 1 year extension to get cap off. But I'm not sure they would cut him if they hadn't already. I think he's just they love the versatility he brings to the offense with all the different things they have him do, lining up as a sixth lineman. He runs a marathon in the backfield every single pre-snap, every single
Right.
game. I mean, he's running back and forth, full sprint. So I think they just love the versatility he brings too much, and I think they are interested to see what happens when you can combine a Derrick Henry and a Patrick Ricard, because that is I think I did the math, and it's 558 pounds coming at you. So
Dude, it
that'd
really
be kind
is.
of fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be fascinating to see what our offense looks like because if I was playing Madden, if it's just on paper, it's like
Yeah,
nobody's gonna stop the Ravens. But the thing that I think was happening last year that it didn't get very much attention because we're winning all the games is nobody gets to eat every week consistently,
yeah,
right? Like 1 week it's this guy, 1 week it's that guy. I
yeah,
think because we're getting Derrick Henry at the back end of his career, he wouldn't mind, hey, if it's week 9 and only got 11 carries, but we win by 20 points, I don't
yeah,
care. Whereas a couple years
exactly.
ago, it's like, hey, I got to get paid. It's the dynamic of I have to get paid is just an overwhelming. It just hangs over every situation. And with the Ravens last year, because Beckham got paid, he didn't really care. It was like, all right, but 5 years ago that wouldn't have worked. So I
Oh,
do think as negative as the energy was about a month or so ago, there was really only one offensive weapon that could
yeah,
completely change the identity.
yeah,
Um, it's not a knock on Gus Edwards, but a lot of
yeah.
people have said it. You can't. It's harder to not run the football at the end of the season with Derrick Henry standing there, right?
Exactly. It's hard to look at your personnel with Derrick Henry and go, yeah, let's only hand it to him 6 times.
But yeah, let's I really could do it. There's so many people that do such great content, and what you guys did at the Ryan Ripken show, the live stream, and then talking about Patrick Queen. I don't like beating a dead horse because there's so much going on. And once a guy leaves the Ravens, I just don't have the time. I think it's because I'm getting older. I don't have the time to be mad at anybody
No.
for things that are just goofy to think about. Like there is no rivalry between the Ravens and Steelers except when they play. Like
Ex-
after the game's over, they make too much money. So if you wish that they hated each other and that they weren't going to sign there, then you also have to wish that there wasn't as much money. And you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just a whole trickle
Exactly.
down thing.
Yeah, it's gotten to the point with social media and everything where all of these guys, and because they all went to college and they grew up with camps together and stuff, they're all boys no matter what team they're on. They've known each other since they were little. It's like it's hard. We're not going to have as many of those like tough-nosed every single player hates each other rivalries anymore.
And it does. And so because of that, it hurts the fandom
Yeah.
because it makes you feel less loyal. And then I feel like as a fan, and we've talked about this before, like the purpose of being a super fan is to
Yeah.
use your team to somehow inspire you in like in your personal life. It's
Yeah.
not so you obsess for hours and hours and hours on Patrick Queen. It's somehow to use the enjoyment and entertainment of it and apply it in your own life. And with
Yeah.
Patrick Queen, the way what I took away from it is the old adage of don't believe what someone says, go by their actions. So whether it's Queen talking or Tomlin talking,
Yeah.
money always talks. But I was surprised. I wanted to hear your thoughts on it before we're finished. I figured he was going to get closer to 60 or 70 million. Is it just the inside linebacker position just doesn't have a ton of value anymore?
This is the biggest mystery of the offseason because the biggest I don't want to say it's a red flag because obviously think Patrick Queen's a great linebacker, but it's interesting to see that nobody for that price, a Mike McDonald in
I was right.
Seattle, or even let's talk about in Tennessee, follow Wilson, who's the defensive coordinator there. You have Miami with Weaver there. I mean, there were a lot of opportunities that seemed like they could easily have offered that. And I'm kind of intrigued why. I mean, Jordan Brooks got a similar deal, and they decided in Miami to go with him over Queen. And I thought that meant that Queen to Seattle was a done deal. They didn't, I
So
guess.
if you Yeah, I would assume. I don't think one game dictates everything, but if you go back to Week 18 and the Steelers have to win the game, So
Yeah.
if you're not biased, if you're the Chiefs, if you're the 49ers, if you're the Titans, if you're whoever, right? You're just watching that game from a personnel standpoint, and you're like, who the hell is this Simpson guy? Like, and so the conclusion is, well, he's a third round pick. Anybody could have had him if they wanted. Um, well, maybe it's the Roquan Smith effect. And then you go back to Queen's numbers before Roquan, and it's like 41 million. He would never have gotten that. So it is one of those situations where, as Ravens fans, we're used to we call it the Ray Lewis effect.
Yeah.
With Edgerton Hartwell still sends Ray Lewis a check, I think, every 2 weeks for his contract
Uh,
that he got, because it's like once you're next to him, Adalius Thomas with the Patriots got
yeah.
paid, and then so I could care less. What's the right way of saying it? As a fan, I could literally care less with Patrick Queen. I actually don't think it makes us a worse team. It makes
No.
us a better team in the sense that we can allocate the resources somewhere else. And yeah,
Exactly.
Simpson, he flashed in a game that the Steelers were pounding the ball and had to win, and he still flashed. So I thought that
Yeah.
was a great sign.
And
And yeah,
the real quick, the guy that flew under the radar, Malik Harrison, coming back, he was actually probably one of our best, weirdly enough, defenders at setting the edge last year when it came
yeah,
to, and like he was just somebody who, when you talk about someone who just does the dirty work, he would go out there and he had no issue just flying into a tackle and making sure that the running back had to cut into the, he was great at that. He's a dirty work guy, great teammate. So I think bringing him back is huge.
two quick other NFL things, and then we'll get into baseball. The most obvious bet that I don't think it was available to bet, but if it was, the most obvious bet in the world, once you knew the Chargers had to get rid of cap room, was that they're getting rid of receivers that get hurt. Well, Allen doesn't always get hurt, but older
Yeah.
receivers. So Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are gone with the Chargers. They've signed Gus Edwards. Like, the Chargers are building the roster exactly the way you would think Roman and
Yeah.
Harbaugh would do it.
They
My
just brought in
question,
Hayden Hurst too.
Hayden Hurst. My question for you with the Chargers ties into the Bears. So I wanted to set it up this way. Then I wanted to go with the Bears, who brought in Keenan Allen. So now they have DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. They got Gerald Everett. They got DeAndre Swift. I have two hot takes here, and they revolve around both teams. I think both teams need to trade down. If I'm the Bears, I'm going with Justin Fields. I think that Justin Fields is good. I know how much they could get for that first pick, and I would do it. I would say, you know what? I think we're good enough to win that division.
Mm.
Let me trade down from 1 to 4 to 6, somewhere in that. They still have the number 9 pick. Now they don't need to add Marvin Harrison Jr. They just need to get a couple of playmakers. Look at the offensive line. Look at the linebackers, like the defensive end, whatever the holes are. I haven't quite dived into their team yet, but I would go off Caleb Williams. I would say Justin Fields for 1 year, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I hate making decisions based on being scared, and it feels like the Bears general manager and the ownership is like, well, we have to draft Caleb because what if he's the best quarterback ever? But my take is with the Bears should trade down and the Chargers should trade down. I don't think the Chargers should. First of all, I would bet anything that they're not going to draft a receiver. It's not what Harbaugh wants to do. The
Yeah.
Chargers need to rebuild the roster. The Bears need to rebuild it. Just wanted to throw that out there and see what your thoughts are.
Yeah, well, I've been on. They need to the Bears need to keep Justin Fields since the second they decided to bring back their head coach, because they pretty much are telling their head coach he's got 1 year to prove it. To go out there, and you can't have that with Caleb Williams, because it would just be such a Bears thing and such an organization that goes in circles in the bottom to have this potential, this quote unquote generational talent, and then you're switching his head coach every other year, and you're not
Right.
giving consistency. So the worst thing that could have happened for the Bears and Caleb Williams, I think, is they take him, the season doesn't go well, and then they're like, okay, we got fired the coach, bring in new people, and now it's like, well, now we have a whole new personnel. Do they even like Caleb Williams? Do they? So the second that they kept their head coach, they have to keep Justin Fields. I completely agree. You're not losing much by going out there. I think he's a good quarterback. Trade back, get assets, and if he's really bad, you're going to have a good pick next year.
Yeah, I'm not. I think Justin Fields is great. There's two things that I think about him. One is he was leading the charge during that pandemic to be like, hey, we should be playing football. I
Yeah,
don't know what we're doing here, which automatically I'll save you from being on cam during my COVID rant. But let's just say I was in favor of everybody being outside. We'll go with that. So that's number one, and then number two, he literally got annihilated in that playoff in the God, what the
Oh,
playoff championship, not the championship game, but it was the
was it
game leading
first?
in.
Who did they? It
Was
was
it
first.
Clemson? He got
Yeah,
hit in the ribs, and just I thought he was done for the game, and instead he battled through it. I watched him a handful of times last year, and I'm like, you if you think Caleb Williams is markedly better than Justin Fields, I really just happen to disagree with you.
yeah,
And so if I were the Bears, I don't think they're going to do it because people make decisions based on, remember, you're talking about the coach, but the general manager will not get fired in the next year as long as he drafts Caleb Williams. If he
yeah,
doesn't draft Caleb Williams and Caleb, it's the CJ Stroud, Bryce Young thing.
yeah.
Like if you're wrong about that, as a
You're
general
done.
manager, you're done.
Yeah, it's like shoot, I forget what old general manager talked about it, and they asked him if there felt pressure between when he had to pick this quarterback, and he was like, no, I guess. Oh, it's when he traded up a bunch of picks to go get the quarterback, and it was Josh Allen, and they asked him about it, and they said, "What did you feel pressure? That's a lot of picks you're giving up." And he was like, "No, because if Josh Allen doesn't work out, I'm fired, and someone else has to deal with that." He was like, "So I really was just playing with house money." I was like, either I just went and got the best quarterback in the draft, or I made the wrong decision and they're firing me, so I don't have to deal with the whole situation I've created there.
Well, you know what? Maybe I'm getting better at this transition thing because as we're talking about decision makers and not getting fired or potentially getting fired, there's one guy at this point that I would literally offer him like a lifetime contract, and I think that's Mike Elias.
Yeah,
There's nothing he can do to get fired. He got the dream job, which is all right. This team is terrible. You get to start over. It was the last and maybe the only thing the Angelos family gave the Orioles on the way out was they really did. He deserves credit for giving Elias a blank, not a blank check, but a blank slate to say, hey, rebuild the organization however you think you should do it, from the international to the draft to player development. And yeah, let's make that transition because I was about to get us caught up in a Chargers rant. So let me cut myself off and I'm going to put you on the spot because I've narrowed it down that there's 4 players for 2 spots. So if you did, excuse me, 5 players for 2 spots. If you disagree with me, you'll
yeah.
let me know. But at this point, I wanted to put you on the record now that we're less than two
Less than
weeks
2 weeks.
away. Got to make a decision. So this is the way I have it for the position players. I don't want to do the pitchers until next week because there's always a chance that a guy is out for 5 days or something like that. So
Yeah,
all right, so here we go. I think this is the obvious guaranteed spots. There's no debate at this point. Catchers, we're settled at catcher. McCann
yeah,
and Ruckman. We're settled with O'Hearn and Mountcastle. We're settled with Gunner, Arias, and Westberg. And at this point, because of the lack of competition slash of how great he's been the past week or two. I think Jackson Holiday is a lock to make the opening day roster. Just doesn't seem
yeah,
and just that anyway. So I'm going to go with Jackson Holiday as a lock there. You can tell me if you disagree with that. Then we go to the outfield, and we got 3 outfielders. So I just named 8 guys there, infielders and the catchers. And the starting outfield is already penned in for opening day. We'll see. I'll be curious to see how Hyde designs the lineup, but we know Mullins, Santander, and Hayes are there.
yeah,
Got it. Cool. That's easy. We don't have to really talk about it. Now, I mentioned we have 5 players for 2 spots. And those 5 players do not include Kobe Mayo because
yeah,
there's a 0% chance that he starts on the opening day roster. So
yeah.
there's no point for us to talk about it. And if you
Exactly.
think that he should, then honestly, you haven't done enough research to know how baseball works and how much
Yeah,
time. Anyway, I don't like to be condescending, but he's still working through some of his mechanics in the field. And
yeah,
there's a 0% chance that the Orioles are going to let him play third
yeah,
base to start opening day. It's just not going to
And
happen.
also the fact that they have 39 men on the 40-man roster right now. So the one that they would make the spot for that would be Jackson Holiday. So if you would want a Kobe Mayo as well, now you
Yeah,
have to cut him from the 40-man roster. So there
right.
is just it doesn't make sense. And it's easier to get Jackson Holiday every day at bats. They're not going to be able to do that with Kobe.
That was the point, right? Because without Frazier now, who's with the Royals, it's either it's not like there's another.
Yeah,
Colton Wong was, he's there. He's there to help. He's
yeah.
reminiscing about Matt Holliday and whatever else he's there for. But all right, so now let's get to the 5 players. So if we get rid of Kobe Mayo, we got Stowers, we got McKenna, we got Mateo, then we have Kerstead, and we have Cowser. Those are 5 players. Zach, you can only put 2 on the roster. If you are with me that Jackson Holiday is on the roster,
Yeah.
now if you want to have, for sake of conversation, we can say there's 3 open spots for 6 players, but I've already put Holiday in there because I
Yeah.
don't think if they put Colton Wong on there, then that leaves off one of these other guys I was talking about. And
Mm.
I just don't see it. So I think Holiday
Yeah.
bats 8th or
Well,
9th on opening day. Go ahead.
yeah, especially with Colton Wong being on a minor league deal, they don't have to even
Right.
push through waivers to get him to the minors. I think he easily starts in AAA, and he's going to be someone where if Holiday doesn't perform well off the bat, then they bring up Colton Wong to kind of see what he can do. But all
Go
right,
for it. Make your
my,
decision. The
my
general
two,
manager hat is on. You gotta give me 2 out
yeah,
of the 5.
Colton Cowser is my one, and then it's funny because people will hate it. I think the last spot is between 2 people, and it's probably people's 2 least favorite humans on the team. I think it's McKenna and Mateo because I think they want a right-handed bat, and they're going to want speed and defense out there. And I think if he's proven that he can play the outfield as well, I think Jorge Mateo, with his speed ability and just versatility, I think he would make the team. So I think Colton Cowser and Jorge Mateo would be those 2.
And McKenna ends up on a different roster because he's out of options then, right?
Yeah, I think he would get DFA'd, and then which that's why it's so hard to pick between those 2 because in the back of my mind it's like, does Hyde really let McKenna reach waivers? Like that's his best friend. Are we really sure that happened? So in the back of my mind, I keep saying like I think it's Jorge just because of the versatility and how much they love him. But I really in the back of my head is like they are like best friends. I think Ryan McKenna's got blackmail or something on.
If Mateo's the odd man out, he'll also get DFA'd and end up on another roster, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So I think
What
they'd like
about
to do, and it's more. I also think it's more likely that McKenna makes it through, so they would do that.
Stowers? If he doesn't make the roster, does he get traded, or does he go back down to AAA to start
He's
the
going
season?
to sit in trees. He is in an awful. I feel horrible for him, but he's unfortunately in a spot where he almost has to have an injury or something happen to get his break back in the majors. Because one, there's so many lefty bats already up that the Orioles have. So adding another lefty outfielder is that necessarily you're already adding Colton Cowser. And then I think they'd prefer Kerstead over Stowers, even though with how well Stowers is playing right now.
So
And
do
it's
you trade Stowers for immediate help, or do you say, you know what, let's just dump them and get a couple 18-year-olds and put
I
them in the
think
system?
I think he eventually gets. I think he makes it to the deadline, and then they'll trade him for something at the deadline.
But don't you, to push back on that is, I feel like his value, how does it increase by him just being in AAA? Like,
I
meaning we've already
continues
seen.
to show just that he's there because I think they also want him as insurance here in case somebody gets hurt, someone's not playing well. Cowser just does not play well, stuff like that. I think they
Gotcha.
still unfortunately love Kyle Stowers and like
So,
him, but they just can't. There's nothing they can do.
so if Cowser, you have him on the opening day roster, but when the hell does he get to play?
I think he goes. I honestly think he is playing almost regularly. I think they have it where Santander is going to get time at DH in the outfield and at first base, and I think it's going to be different matchups throughout the year. But I think they're going to try to get Cowser to play probably, I would say, 4 times a week. You're going to want his bat in the lineup
And do
consistently.
you think that, and the person that loses the most at bats from that situation is Hayes. Do you think Hayes only gets to play against lefties?
In some cases, so I think the way I don't know if necessarily Hayes gets loses the most at bats, just because I would say, I guess, because they would keep Tony in as a DH most likely at times. So yeah, I would say Hayes would probably be the one losing it.
So so the reason I my two guys are McKenna and Mateo. I
Yeah,
don't think Calzer. I'm gonna say this. I don't think he's even being considered to be on the roster because when you talk about getting him in there 4 times a week, you are cutting at bats left and right from people, and I just feel like the easiest thing to do with Calzer, so that there's no drama and there's no confusion, is you are going to be a center fielder for us if we don't re-sign Mullins, or you are the number one trade piece, because dumping him anywhere besides the starting center fielder, I don't think
yeah.
is best for him or best for the Orioles. He's never done that, and your strategy, the way you're setting it up, I feel like I would much rather have a predictable lineup at least to start the season. And I
Yeah.
think if Calzer and Kerstead make the roster, Hyde and Elias spend every morning like, all right, what should our lineup be? What should our
Well,
lineup
I
be?
don't
What
think
should our lineup?
that makes it.
Yeah, I don't think either of them make it because
Right.
they're both in the same spot. I think you look at this roster and you're like, you know what? McKenna is going to make this team. Like that you talk about the
Yeah.
blackmail and this, that, and the third, but it's deeper than that. It's you Austin Hayes is the only right-handed outfielder. Like he
Yeah.
just is, right? So if Austin Hayes got hurt for a week or for 2 weeks, I don't think they want to throw Calzer in left field. I just think they would prefer to throw McKenna in left field, and then if it's a righty, see. So here's the thing: if McKenna's in there, you can platoon McKenna and Kerstead, and nobody's feelings get hurt.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can platoon Hayes and Calzer without Hayes
Yeah.
being like, what are we
No,
doing here?
and that's why the way I look at it is because I think Santander is going to majority DH. They like him in the outfield a little, but I just think that there's so
So you
much.
think O'Hearn loses a lot of at bats
Yeah, that's
potentially?
what I'm thinking is they are more having Hayes. Well, I think Hayes would still play 5, 6 games a week. I think I'm looking more at Calzer's more fielding and right, and then they would have Santander take it games at first base, DH as well, and then
And
find.
that would be, and Zach, I would 100% agree with you if O'Hearn just batted 272 last year and was pretty average. But I kept saying to anybody that would listen, I'm like, dude, if you told me there's 2 outs, bases loaded, and the game's tied, I love
Oh,
Adley and I love Gunner, but this guy is Ryan O'Hearn was so locked in. I
oh, he was the
look,
most clutch player on the team last year.
I just don't think I think when we talk about general managers and the comfortability of my job and everything going on, I feel like if I'm Elias, the easiest thing to do. It might not be the right decision, but the easiest thing to do is to run it back the way we had it last year and tell Kerstead, Stowers, and Calzer that if you force me to bring you up, I will consider it. But at this point, Mateo is the back. Mateo McKenna to me is the lock, and then it's between Mateo and Kerstead. I don't think Calzer makes this roster. I think they want him to be an everyday player. Now, what you said is interesting because I didn't really think about throwing him in right, but I don't. I just have O'Hearn penciled in.
Yeah,
This conversation is. I'm already stressed out. I don't even have to make a decision. We still have 2 weeks.
yeah, I was gonna say, and then that's not even including the fact that maybe they don't keep Holiday, and now this is a whole different conversation because
Well,
then
yeah, because right, because they might say to themselves, all right, we have to keep Kerstead / Calzer.
yeah,
So if we're going to keep Mateo and McKenna, well, why don't I just bring in Kerstead or Calzer since they started last year? We'll
yeah,
throw Jackson Holiday down there, and then we won't even bring in Colton Wong. We'll just have a rock. The only thing with that is then you don't have a backup infielder that can bat lefty. Then you only have Gunner. Dude, you know what? I said to myself I wasn't going to do this until we got closer because I'm like, I'm just going to talk in circles, and it's an amazing storyline and subplot that the
it,
Orioles have gone from a complete dumpster fire to I don't know who's going to make our roster in a good way, right?
I saw someone on Twitter the other day say the MLB could expand rosters to 32 and the Orioles would still have tough decisions.
It is an impossible decision, and that's why I think at the end of the day, don't be risky. I can always bring Cowser and Kerstead in. I don't necessarily see the benefit of starting them up here when you have Mateo and McKenna. But I don't say I won't care because I think that's the wrong way of looking at it. But I
Yeah.
truly won't be bothered. I'll be more
Yeah.
intrigued to see. All right, what did Elias finally decide to do? And here, last question on that. If you had to guess, what percent of the decision is Elias and what percent of the decision is Brandon Hyde? They're obviously having a conversation, but Elias makes the final decision. How much, if you just had to guess, what do you think the
I,
dynamic is in
I
that
think
conversation?
it depends on the person. I think with like the prospects and stuff, that's 85% Elias.
So, like Mateo and McKenna right now, as they're sitting there, like, what the fuck do we do with these guys? How
Yeah,
much
I think
does
that
Michael go ahead?
that I think that's more 50-50 because obviously Elias is going to ask him which guys he likes in, the lineup in these situations, who he'd rather have off the bench, stuff like that. So I think that's more 50-50. But with these young guys, I think that's Elias is like, I don't care what you tell me, Brandon. I'm running these prospects the way that we're running this thing. So
It is going to be a really interesting decision to see what they end up doing. We will check in next week and see if they've made any decisions, or we probably might have to wait till the last day. Oh, before we do the Angels, do you know the Dodgers and the Padres are playing baseball? What, so they have a 2-game series in South Korea for the first time Wednesday. This is amazing. Wednesday, March 20th, and then Thursday, March 21st. It's
yeah,
almost like the sporting gods all get together and they're like, how do we make our lives as entertaining as possible? So Wednesday morning, as I'm sitting there waiting for the tournament, get to wake up early, watch baseball. And then Thursday, as I'm waiting for the tournament, Dodgers, Padres. What
and
are your
it's
thoughts on
at two fantastic teams. We're watching Shohei and them.
What are your thoughts? I always get upset when the NFL plays out of the country because I'm
Mhm.
like, this is our thing. I get weird American like ego or something. But when it comes to baseball and basketball, I'm like, dude, everyone's playing these sports. So I think it's fascinating. I just wanted to get your thoughts on international baseball. Like, you don't
Yeah.
have a problem that they're starting early, right?
No, not at all. I think the only thing that's weird is it's like that sucks about it is it's going to happen. It's like you said, it's the 20th and 21st. Then we got to wait a whole week for the games to count again. So it's going to be like, it's going to get, it's that little teaser, especially with Shohei, Tatis, all those guys. That's going to be a fun.
I'm so. This is the first year I'm like, I feel like I'm gonna watch baseball that isn't related to the American League East
Yeah,
because I'm just in a better mood with baseball. And so it's easier to digest the Dodgers Padres game instead of sitting there and being like, how come we don't have any good players?
exactly. That's how it was so hard to watch baseball when everyone else had good players and we couldn't. We were hoping that we didn't lose 100 games.
No, Elias, what he has done is, yeah, I can't wait. Look, the book was written about the Astros. I guess we have to win a World Series before somebody's going to write a book, but it's going to go down as a team building 101. Like, if you want to know how to build a roster in professional sports, what Mike Elias did with the Orioles and is doing is fantastic. All right, let me shut up about the Orioles. Let's go to the American League West. I think this is going to be the best division. So you tell me if it's worth spending more than a couple minutes on the Angels. Because I honestly, the Athletics, I wanted to save for the end
Yeah.
because I just had something I want to go with the Athletics. So to me, it's a 3-team race, but I wanted to know if I'm missing anything here. Mike Trout in the middle of the lineup. Is there anything else for us to talk about here with the Angels?
The Angels, there's something that the best. Like it truly is just like they panicked so bad last year trying to build around Shohei and like keep. So they brought up Zach Neto really soon, almost just a year after they drafted him. They brought up Nolan Chanel. literally, I think it was 48 days after they drafted him, which is unheard of. I mean, that literally doesn't happen in the
We
MLB.
didn't do that with our three studs, right?
Yeah, no, that did not. What's even crazier is Nolan came up and actually like hit well. Like he was hitting above 300, even though he was just playing in the College World Series. And you're like, okay, this guy
Wow.
must play baseball. Uh, so it is a lineup of guys where as I look down it, you're like, yeah, I know these guys, but it's very much I could see this team. They're gonna be any team that has Mike Trout on it's gonna be somewhat, I would say, competitive. Now, as they've proven over the years, they're not gonna win the I don't think they go to the playoffs. Obviously, we said it was a 3-team race, but they'll get spotlight because of Trout. That's about all. Yeah.
72 and a half wins. Where are you leaning on that?
That's actually really funny. I was just about to say, I was like, I could see them touch 75. I was like, I could
Dude, they're a the Angels
I
are a complete disaster. Like it is because when they had talk about like team building 101 with Elias, you're gonna go back and look at this Angels team building exercise and be like, what the hell were we doing this whole time? And then Anthony Rendon gets all this. People. I wanted to get your thoughts on this because he said what like it's not my number one priority.
yeah.
It's literally not one single professional athlete is it their number one priority, right? Like that's just a silly way of
Yeah.
now. Do you have to phrase it the way he did when the team sucks and he hasn't playing? And he's probably not the best messenger for it, but
Yeah.
it's always funny to me when a fan is like, "What? This isn't your number one priority?"
No one's. But yeah, like you said, it's the way he said it and it's who's saying it. Because Anthony Rendon is not this is not the first time he has talked about his I guess not being happy with playing baseball. So
Yeah, look, it's not supposed to be your no like it's such a straw man argument when you're like, well, my number one priority is my family and my faith. Okay, dude, we know that. Like, we appreciate it. I guess what we're trying to hope for is like, is baseball your third or
yeah,
fourth? Like, 'cause for you, it seems like it might be 30th or something,
yeah.
right?
For Anthony Rendon, he's like, honestly, I'd rather just, sit on the back porch and drink some beers than be
It's
playing.
not like right. It's not like Jokic where he's like, no, I just didn't want to do the parade. Like
Yeah,
I'm still gonna dominate the NBA finals. I just didn't feel like doing the media and the parade and all that crap. Rendon's just like,
yeah.
dude,
Jokic
this
here, he hasn't seen his family in like 8 months, and they're on the other side of the world.
right,
He's like, I
right.
really just want to go see my horses, and everyone's like, he hates us. And it's like, no, he's just homesick and wants to go home. Then you have Anthony Rendon, who's like literally said to the reporters, "I don't want to be here talking to you at 7 a.m.," which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah, meanwhile, Angelos did that on Martin Luther King. Dude, I gotta eventually
Oh,
anyway, let me stop before I get Jeremy in trouble on here. All right, let's do before we're done with the Angels, did they decide if the Reed Detmers is going to be the starting pitcher that we all get to heckle here in about 13 days? Or are they going to go with Canning or Sandoval or somebody else that I'm not aware? Or they were rumored to sign Blake Snell too, but
yeah,
obviously he wouldn't be ready.
yeah, that's the whole thing. I don't think. Well, it would still be a lefty, so they won. They love their lefties right now. But
Oh,
yeah,
we're going to face a lefty on opening day.
yeah, it's pretty much guaranteed. So, with,
Mm.
yeah, so I think honestly we could see lefties that whole series. Uh,
So what is that? God, all right, let me not go back to the Orioles roster. Jesus Christ, Ryan, let me stop. So we're
I'm
going to face a lefty.
be like I was about to start getting into what would happen, but I stopped myself as well. I was gonna be
Because
like, so
Elias
that's where,
but honestly, when they look at the options, I guarantee you Elias is sophisticated enough that he's gone through the projections for the first 30,
oh
40 games of the pitchers we're gonna face. And if he looks at it and is like, you know what? If we're gonna get an overwhelming amount of lefties in the month of April, then maybe Cowser and Kerstead
yeah,
do belong, in AAA because they're not going to get as many bats. But I say that, and Cowser is like crushing left-handed pitching at the moment.
yeah,
So,
that's the other thing. And some those guys are just they're just unreal right now.
but Mullins is not going to be platoon that way. Like if it's a lefty in there, Mullins gets that start.
Yeah, although and that was the other thing I was going to bring. I meant to bring up is like this all also does like this could have a wrench if they suddenly are like actually like you said about the whole pitchers. You can randomly have a guy be like, oh, he's out. They could be like, yeah, we're giving Mullins 2 weeks to rest his hand. It could be.
Right.
So that's the other thing.
The only problem with that, the only thing then we'll really move on. But the only problem with that is if they did that with Mullins or Hayes or Santander, and then Cowser and Kerstead are just on, then it's like, all right, sorry, Mullins. Then what do we
Yeah,
do? Because last year we were about to have that problem, but Cowser was unfortunately just not very good, so Mullins was able to get that spot back. All right, let's let's put a I guess we're done with the Angels. You know what? We'll talk more about the Angels in 2 weeks because we'll be playing them.
yeah.
So we'll recap that opening day game and then see if
Hopefully
there's something else.
by then they can get somebody to help Trout.
Well, their owner is an interesting man. I suggest people do like a little bit of a deep dive on him. I don't think he has the best karma in the world. And that could be potentially why the Angels can't get out. Like, that was my fear with the Orioles. I was like, I don't see Angelos holding up a World Series and we having a parade. Once we got Rubenstein in here,
Yeah,
I think our karma is
yeah,
will allow us to win the World Series. All right, let's go. Let's go Seattle because Seattle. I'm almost positive that right before the playoffs started last year, I was like, you know what? I really don't want to play the Mariners. I remember saying
yeah.
rather play the Rangers. I didn't want to play the Mariners. I love the Mariners pitching, so I want to start there. And maybe we start with who's their best pitcher because I like all of these guys. My favorite one is George Kirby, but their five starters are Castillo, Luis Castillo, Logan Gilbert, George Kirby. I love Bryce Miller too, and Brian Wu. It looks like Castillo is going to get the opening day nod, but I think Kirby, for my money, is the best pitcher. How do you evaluate their starting pitching?
It's beautiful to look at. And honestly, the only issue I have is that it's all righties. I would love for there to be a lefty or two in there, but just when you look at it, it's almost like what the Orioles are with. Obviously, relating everything back to the Orioles, but with how they are with position players right now, that's how the Mariners are with. They just keep bringing up these top prospects for pitching, and it's incredible. I am a massive Luis Castillo fan. I've loved him since he was with the Reds. So
Mm-hmm.
him, but like you, George Kirby, he could put up a Cy Young here.
Yeah, so their starting rotation is good enough to get them home. Let's go through the roster. Go through their projected lineup. A lot of these names are going to sound familiar. Their best player is Julio Rodriguez, but after I go through the lineup, you kind of give us some things to look at here. Projected starting lineup is J.P. Crawford at shortstop, Rodriguez in center, Jorge Polanco at second base, Mitch Garver as the DH, Cal Raleigh, their catcher, who is one of my least favorite guys. I'm always like, fuck, this guy is just a menace at the plate.
He is.
Always just in my just gets on my nerves. That guy, Mitch Hanginger, is that how I say it?
Haniger, Mitch Haniger.
Hanniger, yeah, he's a good ball player. Dominique, and then the Dominique Canzone. Don't
Yeah.
recognize him. Is he a newer guy for them?
Yeah, well, I think he's going to be platooning with Luke Raley.
Gotcha. And then their first baseman, Ty France, and then Josh Rojas at third base. Where are we going? Is Jorge Polanco in the three spot? That to me seems not the best three. Their 3-4 spot doesn't seem to feel
No,
like World Series potential.
yeah, that's the thing with the Mariners is as incredible as their rotation is. I think I love the Luke Raley get. I think they have potential. It really is kind of Julio Rodriguez and friends is what it feels like in a lot of ways. I actually love Ty France. He is an incredible just bat to ball skill guy. He's gonna get on base. He's always going to be hitting above 300. Uh, I as much as you put it perfectly, you described him perfectly. Cal Raleigh is just a mess. He just gets up there, and at the worst times he performs well. Worst times for the opponent. Uh, Jorge Polanco, I agree. It's not your ideal three hitter. I think they can do better. They're going to rely on pitching. I mean, and in fact, a lot of people over the offseason thought potentially that was the perfect match for the Orioles because they had so much pitching and no up and coming fielding prospect that can really play next year. So people thought potentially a match there. But yeah, I would really like seen them get one more impact back somewhere.
And then they have the prospects. So assuming they're in the race and they're right around, the division lead going into the All-Star break, do they have the prospects to be able to add a bat or two?
Yeah, so they have 3 top 100 prospects, 2 in the top 40 actually, but they're all younger guys that aren't projected to get up there until maybe midway through next season, not this season. So
So you're telling me Paul Goldschmidt to the Mariners is a
oh,
possibility?
now that talk about that would change this lineup. That would be an incredible addition. That changes the whole aspect of everything here. I would honestly say probably Mitch Haniger and Luke Raley are my underrated 2 guys that I think are going to really make or break that lineup. If they can get good numbers out of them and really just kind of expand the depth of the lineup there into the 7-8 hole, I think that's where they'll have success if they can get
And then
that.
where do you rank their bullpen compared to the rest of the league?
They have I mean, like I said, it's hard when you have such a good rotation. I don't think their bullpen is not as good as their rotation. I think that's where or as good as other bullpens in the AL West. I think that's honestly where their lineup and bullpen is why I think they probably get third in this division. Which sucks because I want them to fit. I like the Mariners honestly, but I just can't with this lineup see them overpowering the specifically.
Yeah, it's like the Mariners seem like one of those teams where if you threw them in the AL or NL Central, you
Oh
pencil them in for the division.
yeah, but they're unfortunately in a very tough. I mean, like you said, the toughest division out there.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the Astros because these guys are these are just familiar names left and right. The Astros, man, if the Astros didn't have the scandal that they had, about banging on trash cans or whatever the hell they were doing, their legacy would be a lot different. But I don't think people want to. It's almost just like a dead topic. But you also don't get the kind of credit that you would get if you didn't have that scandal. But the Astros have been so good for so long. And look, they have the best. I would say 1 through 5 or at least 1 through 4, guaranteed they have the best 1 through 4. Altuve, Jordan Alvarez, Bergman, and then Kyle Tucker. I love the Orioles. I think our top 4, though, I just don't think it's
No,
on their level.
no,
But
no. I would say they have 1 through 6 is disgusting.
so right, then you finish it off. You got Abreu, Yanir Diaz at the catcher spot, Chas McCormick, who I'm a huge fan of his. I feel like anyway. Jeremy Pena, the shortstop, who to me that's the breakout guy for the Astros. He was supposed to he's the Correa replacement. He hasn't had to be amazing. I wonder if there's a little bit of a drop off with their best players this year, and they need Pena to step it up. And then they got Jake Myers, who I think he's the best 9 hitter. I mean, the Orioles, frankly, are going to have a really good 9 hitter, whoever they put down there. But this lineup is effing loaded. And then their starting rotation, they're going to have Framber Valdez, who just disgusting. One of the best lefties in the game. They got Christian Javier, who is one of my favorite pitchers. I love the way he works. Jose Urquidy, and then Hunter Brown, who was, I mean, Jesus, that was their guy that they thought was going to be their best pitcher. This Astros team is amazing. How do the maybe a better question to ask, because I feel like if I asked you if the Astros are going to make the playoffs, that seems kind of a silly. How do they not make the playoffs? Like what has to happen for the Astros to only win 80, 85 games?
Pandemonium. Pandemonium. Because they didn't even talk about they're getting Justin Verlander back in like a month or so. So like
I didn't even mention them.
yeah, because it's obviously starting on the injured list. So we went down their incredible lineup. You see their incredible rotation. They have Josh Hader, one of the best. They signed Josh Hader, the best closer in baseball, and then you add in a Justin Verlander. This is the team that I think is. This is insane baseball team, top to bottom.
Hey Zach, hang on for hey. Can you just log out and then come right back on? You just
Yep.
skipped for a second, and I want to hear Astros Rangers thoughts from you. So just hop back on here, and I'll probably talk about until you get back. All right, good. Because I don't know if I'm going to talk about Greg Popovich. That seems a little irrelevant at the moment, but it still just bothers me. I guess I was watching the Celtics Suns. Oh, good. Zach's coming back before I ramble too much. Did I get you back in there?
We good?
Yeah, I was literally getting ready to do a Greg Popovich rank because I didn't know how long I had, and that's forever going to be my thing. Every time I watch Victor Wembanyama play basketball, I'm like, why is this team not in the playoffs? Because
Yeah.
Greg Popovich is smarter than me. He's less racist than me. He's a better person than me. He's got better moral values than me. Greg fucking Popovich. All right. Okay. Josh Hader, the Astros. Yeah, dude, the Astros are just loaded. So you said pandemonium. Give me a little bit more specific. What's the one indispensable player in their lineup where you're like, as an Orioles fan, if I could just remove one of these guys, then is
Jordan.
it Alvarez, right?
Yeah, without a
Is he
doubt.
the best? I know we talk about Acuna, but remember when we were talking about like Ryan O'Hearn base. So right now, bases loaded, ninth inning, 3-2 count or whatever. The count hasn't started. However you want to do it, you only can have one hitter up there.
Yeah.
I don't think it's Acuna for me. I really think it's Jordan Alvarez.
Yeah. Especially, I mean, for such a young player, he already has how many clutch home runs in the playoffs by himself. I mean, it's just when the lights are the brightest, he's putting the ball out.
Dude, he is an absolute monster. So this Astros team, are you higher on them as I guess we'll just transition to I haven't talked about this team in months. I guess we're finally at the point now where we can be at peace with it and move on to the stupid Rangers. Before I get into the Rangers, to put a cap on the Astros, do you have the Astros winning this division?
Yeah.
Okay. So where do we fall on the Rangers? What's the headline? Is the headline what's the headline? You tell me. On the Texas Rangers 2024 season, by the time we're finished, what's going to be the headline on the Rangers?
Disappointment.
No playoffs for the Rangers.
No, I think they make the playoffs. I think they finish above Seattle. But I think expectations are really high for this team. And I think coming off a World Series, there's going to be a little bit of the World Series hangover. I think that's inevitable. I think they're expecting massive years from Adolis Garcia, Josh Young again. And like Jonah Heim took off and became, they caught lightning in a bottle there. They just had so many things work out perfectly and play so incredibly on that stretch run that I don't think they're not going to keep up that insane run, obviously, that they had in the playoffs.
So educate us on the new guys, because there's a couple guys out here that I did not recognize. So I need your help. Wyatt Langford. Who the hell is that? And is he going to be a contributor?
Yeah, that is one of the top prospects in baseball. Actually, is Texas Rangers fans love to say he's better than Jackson Holliday. He's not better than Jackson Holliday. At least.
Oh, wait a second. This guy's supposed to be that good?
Yeah, that's why. But obviously, you're relying on a rookie to come up and deliver. I think he's going to be very good. But I think
Sorry, go ahead. Finish your thought.
I think him and Evan Carter. Obviously, Evan Carter came up last year.
Love Evan Carter.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing is they all came up and it was perfect. Like they all no one had a slump. Everyone came up and took off. And I think I'm curious to see what happens when they're in the lineup and people are slumping and people aren't hitting well, to see what happens then. When I say they're disappointing, I think they're still a wild card team. I think in their heads it's disappointing because they want to go win the division. They want to, stick it to the Astros. They want to do that. I don't think they win. I would not be surprised if they don't make it to the divisional round.
So you got Wyatt Langford is supposed to be their stud. What about Justin Foscue, the projected first baseman?
I think he's more of just. I'm not too honestly even too sure about him. I think he's just a guy like a placeholder right now. I'm trying to think who they if they lost anyone that's coming back.
Well, they got. I think the reason that he's on this projected lineup that I'm looking at is because they have Nate Lowe, or I always forget if he's Lowe or Lau.
Yeah, that's who I'm. Yep.
So he's projected on the injured list, and then
Yeah.
Seager looks like he's projected on the injured list. So all right, so that guy's a placeholder. Is that the same thing with Ezekiel Duran, or is he supposed to be a
No, I think
contributor?
he'll contribute. He'll be decent. I'm actually. He's from. Did they get him for? He was from the Yankees. Actually, that was the Joey Gallo trade.
Gotcha. There you go. That's why you're here, man. You get paid the big bucks for all the no, because I like just being like instead of me doing the research on it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's easier, frankly, for me to just serve it up to you and be like, hey, what do you think of this guy? What do you think of that guy? But a lot of these younger players, and you notice from the Orioles, that from a gambling perspective, once you hear Zach's like little blurb on it, my advice to you, and I said this when we were doing the NL West to start, is like go find somebody that's passionate about Wyatt Langford.
Yeah,
Like the same way that we're passionate about Jackson Holiday. And then once you read the write-up on him, you can say to yourself, all right, let me watch a little bit of highlights. Then I can develop a full opinion on him. So is it fair to say with Marcus Simeon, Evan Carter, Adolis Garcia, Yona Heim, Josh Jung, a lot of the same faces, Corey Seager, Nate Lowe, all those guys. But if the Rangers are going to be better than you think, is it because Wyatt Langford's really good, or do you think the rotation is going to be
gotta be
better
right.
than you think? So the rotation doesn't look great, right? Like it was very up and down last year. They
Yeah.
got a couple guys. Anyway, go. What's your
So
take on it?
that rotation has to tread water until help comes because they're getting DeGrom, Scherzer, and Tyler Mahle all back, but not at least until mid-season, it looks like. And obviously, coming off of surgeries and stuff, DeGrom with the Tommy Juan, you never know how he's going to react. He's going to pitch after that. So it's so many question marks in the rotation, and that's why I can't have them over the Astros is when you just look at these two teams side by side. The Astros, I think they both have extremely deep lineups. I think their lineups are two powerhouses, but the Astros rotation just blows this team out of the water.
And where are you at with John? I think everybody is on the same page with Evaldi. Great big game pitcher. You know what you're getting out of him.
Yeah.
John Gray to me is the wild card. If the Rangers are going to repeat, they're going to be knocking on the door. Like you said, the rotation's got to hold, tread water. John Gray was, I mean, he just wasn't good last year.
Yeah.
He finished off a little bit better as the season, was hurt a little bit. To me, I really liked him coming from Colorado. You go from that stadium to Texas. Do you think he bounces back this year? Would he be a fantasy guy that you would target?
I can't. I honestly can't trust him after last year. He's one of those guys where I think if he's not performing well, he's one of the first people that gets bumped by a DeGrom or Scherzer. Because I will say I am a big Andrew Heaney fan. He's a big strikeout guy. He's fun to watch.
And then the stupid Dunning guy, just because he pitched, wasn't he the game one starter against the son of a bitch? I swear we were gonna get. He scored in the first inning too, right? Like everything was going the right direction, and then, but yeah, they got him in there, and and then they got Odorizzi, who I've always liked. He was on Tampa, Jake Odorizzi.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
no, yeah, he's a good pitcher too. I mean, Tampa just produced. That's the other thing. He hasn't been what he was in Tampa, but then again, no one is because they have some black magic they do on pitchers there.
So I was thinking about how we're going to do this Oakland Athletics conversation because I don't like kicking somebody when they're down. That doesn't seem like a becoming characteristic of a human being. Is when someone sucks or someone's having a bad day, to just kick them while they're down. Just doesn't seem like the right move. And so I'm going to phrase it to you like this: what would you do? So I grew up in Baltimore.
Yeah.
We've had two teams to root for, plus Maryland sports gives you like a third team. So if you
Yeah.
love basketball, baseball, football, find your team. How are you supposed to process being a fan, just a regular kid, normal person in Oakland? you finally have the Warriors perform. You have that magical team. They get good enough, they win, and they're like, all right, we're going to raise prices and move the stadium and get a whole new fan base, a bunch of rich people that do tech stuff. It's like nobody does tech stuff in fucking Oakland. Nobody. Probably don't even have Wi-Fi in Oakland. But you know where they do have it? San Francisco. So we're taking your Warriors and we're heading to San Francisco. All right, no big deal. Got the black and silver, got the Raiders. It's like, no, 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 no. Not only are you losing the Raiders, but we're going to forget about you so fast because they're going to go to the coolest city that we have in the whole country. And then not only that, they're actually going to be good as soon as they get there. So as soon as they get there, anyway.
Yeah.
Now they're not that great, whatever, but they get to host a Super Bowl. You know where there was never a Super Bowl? Oakland, California. Okay. So now we get to the baseball team. And it's like, all right, there's one thing you could count on. At least I'm going to date myself, but I guess my high school and college, my early 20s, it's like, man, the fucking Oakland Athletics are going to be good after the All-Star break. Like there is something about Oakland in August and September that they are just the best team in baseball. I still remember Tim Hudson, Mark Mulder, Barry Zito. I don't know if this is before you were alive, but these guys, Oakland Athletics baseball would produce pitchers and hitters that it became a joke because they were still great and they would get rid of all their good players. They were the Tampa Bay Rays before the Tampa Bay Rays. So how are we supposed to analyze the fact that they have to play this season in Oakland? Like it is like last year, I thought that was the last year they were playing with all the drama, but no, they're going to do a whole nother year here. Their total wins is 57.5. Can you just tell me? I don't even remember my question. I just went on a rant. Yeah, what would you do if you were in Oakland? If you're just a kid, like what are you supposed to do? Do you root for the Raiders now when they go to Vegas? You don't root for the like the San Francisco Giants and 49ers. Yeah. Like what the hell am I supposed to do? Maybe I gotta get somebody from Oakland on the pod. Like seriously, I feel what do they do?
I have no clue. I hope I never know. I hope I never have to understand because it is awful. It's awful what's happened, and just the blatant they don't care. Like the ownership, they're not even putting a good team together. It's like their final, like, hey, we're gonna go for it for the the city one last time. They're like, no, we're honestly we're good. Like we're just gonna put.
I don't know. Okay, to be fair, I know more than the average fan, but I am nowhere near on your level of the other baseball players. Like I can keep up with anybody with NBA and NFL, but I knew going into this preview, I'm like, I really don't know a lot of players outside of the American League East. So I say that to say I legitimately don't know any of the players except Paul Blackburn and Alex Wood. Dude, I like their 2, 3, 4 starting pitchers. Paul Blackburn, Alex Wood, and Ross Stripling. They sound relatively familiar to me. I cannot tell you. I think I know Brett Rooker. That sounds a little familiar to me. But go ahead. Is there anybody on this athletics team that well, they got to have an all-star. So why don't you start with that? Who's going to be their all-star? And
probably Brett Rooker again. It's probably going to be Brett Rooker again. They'll have Esteury Ruiz. He's really fast. He stole like 60 bases last year. That's fun.
Would any of these guys, would Brett Rooker make the Baltimore Orioles roster?
I don't think the Orioles solely because of just like this, but like if you're saying like if good enough to.
Wait, hold on. You're telling me that the Oakland Athletics have not one guy in their lineup that would make our roster to start the season? Like they would just look at Brett Rooker and be like, not exactly what we need.
Well, I'm trying to think like he's good enough, obviously, but I'm
to be on other teams.
Yeah, like he would. Oh, he's definitely like if he ever was up for trade or something, teams would jump for him. But I'm just thinking,
but would you wouldn't swap him out for O'Hearn or Mountcastle, though, would you? It's close.
Yeah, I mean, I really like. Probably I would. He's a righty, so you would have to do if you were going to do it. You'd have to get for Mountcastle because you can't have two righties sitting there if you get.
But dude, this is how you don't kick somebody when they're down, and you make yourself feel better about being an Orioles fan. You're like, all right, so the best player on the Oakland A's roster may or may not be, as good as Ryan Mountcastle. So that's basically what we're looking at. And I love Ryan Mountcastle, but The
Yeah.
Orioles win projection total. Would it be fair to say that if Ryan Mountcastle was out for the year, it wouldn't even change by one game?
Yeah, I'm not sure it would move much.
That's how deep we are, and the Oakland Athletics are basically relying on Brent Rooker to be Babe Ruth if they want to have any chance to make the postseason.
Exactly.
What would be a bigger surprise, that the Athletics make the postseason, or that the Rockies or the Net? Like, the Athletics can't make the postseason, right?
No,
Like,
no
it's
chance.
impossible.
If that happens, I think their owner would stop the team before let that happen. Like if they were starting, he would like start cutting people from the team if they started on win streak.
It's amazing. And is it a foregone conclusion? I've read a bunch of things, but like, they're going to Vegas because the reason they're going to Vegas is because Major League Baseball and all the owners want them to go to Vegas. Like, literally nobody except the fans want them in Oakland. It was the opposite of the Baltimore situation, where it was like, dude, you're not taking this team out of Baltimore even if you wanted to. Oakland, it's like, I feel like if the richest people in Oakland all got together and like overpaid for it, they still would be like, no, we're just leaving.
Yeah,
And it's
so like we just don't want to be in Oakland anymore.
it's like an underreported story, probably because just nobody cares. But
Yeah.
being an Oakland fan is it's a nightmare. It's just not right. So anyway, I'm gonna look up the schedule real quick and figure out when the Orioles go to Oakland, because that'll be the cheapest weekend. You can get to probably, dude. You know what? On a side, this will be my last little stupid thing about the Athletics. But I remember as a kid, Yankees fans would come and say it was cheaper to go to like all three games at Camden
Oh,
Yards and the traveling and all that crap than to sit for. And now, man, like, have you got your tickets for opening day? I talked to somebody that said it's going for like $400 for a freaking outfield ticket.
oh my God. Jesus. No, I already have, but I did not know they were already up there. I guess depending on what geez.
Yeah, like, we basically have turned into, yeah. So if you're looking for something to do, oh, it's the July 4th weekend. That might be a good trip. July
Yeah.
5th, 6th, and 7th. We head all the way to Oakland. You can probably get in for $5. It'll be all Orioles fans.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Coliseum.
Jeez, Liz. All right. Well, look, this was good. And do you have any hot college basketball takes here before we go? Because there's only a million games
Yeah.
today. If there's anything that we need to look at, is that your wheelhouse, or are you just doing like $10 parlays on like 8 games or something?
Oh well that as well. But I'm right now. I love UNC. I love the guard play. You need good guard play, March. That's my hot take. I do have a future, but like that's my hot take.
Dan Levitard and Stugatz on the Dan Levitard show.
Oh,
They
yeah.
did a bit that I hope I don't embarrass Jeremy by saying this, but whatever. But it was basically a bit about how everybody on the radio has the same takes for certain things, and one of them is for March Madness. All you have to say, Stugatz is like, listen, I've been doing this for 30 years. I never know the players, but if you say that you need good guard play, it's like, it's all about guard play in the NCAA tournament, and you can just talk about that for 20 minminutes, and then you name drop a couple of the guards, and you're an expert on the March Madness tournament, just like that.
Yeah, no, it's actually the reason why I have Houston and UNC, because when I watch them, they talk about the guards, and I'm like, you need good guard play. You need
Dude, that's hilarious.
it's one of
I'm
those
gonna make
coin sayings that you get away with.
Well, I have one prediction that I want to go on the record for college basketball, and then I'll be done, because it's the first game, and I was really close to betting today. So if I say it out loud, then I won't make my bet, because I promised myself no bets until the March Madness tournament, because I do this every year. I conflate the conference tournament to the March Madness tournament, and it just never works. So I'm like, you know what? Not doing it. Loved Pittsburgh the other night. Didn't bet it. They win easily. I look at it this morning. I'm like, Michigan State should not get 7.5 points, right? Against Purdue. It's Michigan State. It's March. And then I'm like, Purdue's going to beat them by 20, because if I bet Michigan State today, Purdue will beat them by 20. So my only advice to people in this noon game, don't take Michigan State. Purdue, like, run is unbelievable. Last year they lose to the 16 seed. The year before they lose to the 15 seed St. Peter's.
Yeah.
And then they had this, they just have not been able to put it together. They lost the 1 year to Virginia in that crazy overtime game.
Oh my God, that was
so
unreal.
as much as you talk about the guard play, just stay away from Purdue. The game's at noon. It's a long day. You don't need to lose the first game. So that would be my little 2 cents before we get out of here.
Yeah, stay away from good advice.
All right. To put a bow on everything, I'll see you next week, and we'll do. So the way we're going to do it is we'll do the AL Central next week, and
Yep.
then our next podcast after that will be the day after, as long as the weather is all good for Thursday. It'll be the day after opening day. Hopefully, you'll still be here, ready to go. And then I was thinking about our timing. I think it'll be great that Friday to then do the deeper dive into the American League East,
Yeah.
since those are the teams that we care the most about. But you're on the record for saying you like the Astro. You think the Mariners make the playoffs, or do you think they fall short? Because you can't put 8 teams in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's now I'm trying to think I don't think anyone is going to take a wild card spot. Yeah, I'll say that no.
So you got the Astros win the division. You got the Rangers. You have
Rangers
the
will make
Orioles.
Rangers take the wild card, and then the other two, I think, come out of the 2 wild cards.
And we know one of those teams won't be the Red Sox, because I think that is the team that is. I don't know what the hell they're doing. We'll get to them in a couple weeks. But yeah, Blue Jays, Yankees, Rays, Mariners they're. All right, cool. A lot to talk about. I could keep talking forever. Good. We'll do that next week. And then, did I miss anything? I feel like I might be forgetting something. Did I forget anything?
No, I think we.
You didn't want to do an Aaron Rodgers, Sandy Hook conversation before we go?
Run for vice president real quick. I'll start my campaign.
The vice president isn't the headline. The headline is I don't have the podcast. Did you watch his podcast that he did with?
No, I've seen all the clips, but yeah, no, I didn't sit down and it's gotta love it.
You do. It's America. You gotta love it.
Yeah.
It is. All right, let me stop before we do something we're not supposed to do, and we'll get out of here. Next week we will do the AL Central. And yeah, next Friday also will be, it'll be the second day of the tournament, so we'll have a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
And yeah. I knew I was going to forget something if I didn't say it again. One more person for us to follow.
I'm going to call Baltimore Battery, the Baltimore Battery that cover the Orioles stuff.
Dude, they do a great job. I read them religiously. Yep.
Yeah. No, so I love. If you're not following them, they're great to follow.
Yeah, and look, if there's somebody, we're doing a gambling advice. So if people don't want to send money, it's different than contributing people that are doing content. If somebody's charging you $2, $3, $4, $7 a week or a month, and they're really working their ass off, just give them the money. Because if we don't have people that are, Zach's a personality, but we need the journalists of the world that are going to do the hard work.
Exactly. Yeah, get the people that I can pass from.
Yeah, because we don't want to live in a world where everybody has to write for the New York Times or the USA Today. So, all right, there's a lot of great people. Hopefully, as the Orioles season moves on, we'll keep highlighting all the people that are trying to bring us great content. We get tons of Orioles content all over the place. So, Zach, you've been great, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Be
Cool.
back next week.
Yeah, see you next week. I meant to count how many episodes we did. So by next week, I'll have the number for you.
Oh, it's got to be.
It is. It's been great, man.
Really funny. Our first episode. How can the Ravens stop Henry? And now here we are.
That is, dude. This is why we need a pregame show, because we could have started the whole thing that way. If I knew how to use some of the technology, I could have brought the clip back. I get jealous sometimes. I'll be honest. I'll watch your show with the Ryan Ripken podcast, and I'm like, okay, I should be able. And then I tried one day to and I'm like, I'm gonna mess up the entire stream, and it's just not worth it. So I'll get some. I said to you before we recorded, we'll both know that we made it in life when we have a tech assistant at some point that'd be here.
Exactly. Until then, we're struggling how to do it.
Well, enjoy your weekend. I know you worked a lot this week. It was a lot of content, a lot of cool stuff. So recharge your batteries, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, and we'll good basketball.
All right, man. See you, Zach.
See ya.